We've got Ollie. We've got Ollie from SJL Insurance, who's also going to co-host this with me. So welcome along. Any questions you get, you can put in the chat. And in the meantime, what I'll do is we've got someone else coming in. We will start with some sharing. Okay. So we've got Quintech, and we're here to talk to you with SJL about the truth in relation to cyber insurance. If you've been on one of these seminars before, I've got some slightly different information for you. I'm running over some of the same information as well. So if you've listened before, hopefully it won't be too arduous for you. Essentially, what we're here to do is to give you some information around cyber insurance from a service point of view, so from a technical point of view, but also actually the realities of the insurance itself, which is where Ollie will take over. So a good question that I've got is, if cyber crime was its own economy, does anyone know, and you can use the chat, does anyone know how large that economy would be, i.e. would it sit 10th in the world economy? Bearing in mind, the United States economy is 10.5 trillion. So does anyone have any ideas on that? If not, that's fine, but you can use the chat if you want to. Okay, and the reality is it would sit third, just behind China. So at the moment, the estimation is 8 trillion. And this is from 2023. The reality is by 2025, it's expected to be the same size as the United States economy. And that's a massive amount of money. That's not just money that's taken from cybercrime, it's the cost of cybercrime. So getting everything put back together, getting your business up and running again, etc., etc. It also includes the money paid out in ransomware. The biggest one a few years ago by the American government was 6 billion in one hit. So it does give you an idea of the scalability of these things. Just some other stats there as well. UK businesses last year, over 50% experienced a cyber attack. Only 31% of UK businesses have actually undertook a cyber risk assessment this in the last year to date. And that's a really low number. And hopefully today will give you some idea as to why we want to increase that. Phishing scams were still the most common type of cyber attack in the UK, and that was accounting for 84% of cyber attacks. And then ransomware, which we're going to pick on today, was increased by around 70%. These staggering figures in reality. Some other stats, phishing scams, as we said, were some of the most common. Small businesses, so that's going to apply to a lot of us here today. So that's businesses between 11 and 50 people experienced the steepest rise in victims, so 42%, and cost, which is a staggering increase of 396% between 2019 and 2023. So it gives you an idea of how quickly that's escalating. And that's something, again, that we really want to sort of get across from a statistical point of view. It's the increase, the exposure to it is becoming more and more common. 30% of businesses that are hit by ransomware and pay the ransom still don't get any data recovered. So that's nearly a third. And that, again, that's quite a scary statistic. So over 30% of all attacks result in a total backup compromise. And again, I'm going to come back to this shortly because it's such an important point to make. 21% of businesses yet to experience attack don't think they would have to close. So that's someone that's not had an attack on their business. 21% of them feel that they wouldn't have to close if they had an attack. 100% of those who have been victims said they would have to close. So once they've actually had it happen, they understand the implications of it and the complications of it as well. And it's not just as cases, just as simple as getting it back up, putting it back together, and off we go. Often, especially when insurance is concerned, there's forensic information that needs to be taken as well, and that is time consuming. And then, as we said earlier, those small businesses are really the focus of it. 59% of organisation attacks were attacked by a form of ransomware in 2023, and that's globally. Again, that's a staggering figure. The leading causes are 32% of attacks exploited vulnerabilities. So these are where maybe patches aren't put in, maybe where a firewall isn't configured correctly, etc., or a 0-day. So these things, again, are things that we can mitigate against. And 29% came from compromised credentials, so stolen information, basically. Typically, these tend to be employees that have left the business, but their credentials are still active. And that's, again, something that we can certainly help with. Some of the sources there: Action Fraud, Office for National Statistics, National Cyber Security Centre, Hiscox, and then IBM Security X-Force, which sounds really cool, but I'm sure it's not as cool as it sounds. So I'm going to delve into a little bit about ransomware, insurance, cyber essentials, and plus firewalls and patch updates, and then I'm going to hand you over to Ollie. Realistically, ransomware, so I've been talking about that already. It's a type of malicious software, so we call it malware, designed to block access to a computer system or its data until the sum of money, ransom, is paid. It typically works by encrypting the victim's file. So this means that you then as a business don't have that accessibility to that file. And that's why they're very keen on hitting your backups, because if they hit your backups, they have everything. So they then demand payment, usually in cryptocurrency, because it's so hard to trace, for them to provide you with a decryption key. So it's a process, well thought out process, but it's all about trying to smuggle your data out, lock it, and make sure you can't have access to it. So the encryption of it is something that we've just said. It's using strong algorithms to lock the files, and it makes it nearly impossible to recover the data without an encryption key. After the encryption, you get a demand informing the victim of the attack, providing instructions on how to pay to regain access to their data. Typically, as we said earlier, it's a cryptocurrency. One of those is Bitcoin. It allows them to have some form of clandestineness to the attackers themselves. And then ransomware typically includes coming through by phishing emails, malicious attachments, infected software downloads, or known vulnerabilities in software or networks. So the types of ransomware that we see are crypto ransomware. So it encrypts the files, demands for a decryption key. Locker ransomware, locking the victim out of their system entirely, so you have no access to your devices or your systems, and that's quite a scary situation. And then scareware, which is a great name, using scare tactics to trick victims into paying ransom, often without actually encrypting files or locking the system. So it's that threat. The other thing that we're seeing, literally I picked up on today, was encrypting the files, but the threat is to allow that data to be published. So if you don't pay the ransomware, not only are you not going to get it back, but they then publish that data through dark web methods, essentially. And again, that's that blackmail scenario. And again, that's been prevalent quite recently. So The impact of this is obviously it causes significant disruption, data loss, and financial damage to individuals and organizations. As we said earlier, 30% of cases, paying the ransom doesn't guarantee that that data is going to be recovered. Ransomware, when they take a backup or it's compromised, the amount of the ransomware tends to be doubled. And that, again, gives you a significant understanding about how motivated they are to really go after your backups. Recovery cost when a backup is involved is 8 times what it would be if it wasn't involved. And downtime is 4 times longer. 94% of ransomware attacks over the last 12 months have included the backup as a main target. So it's not just getting into the system, it's directly going after the backup as the target. 57% even of these attacks have been successful. And the encryption of your backup means you have no fallback point that's readily available to you. So again, it's something that needs to be taken seriously. So how can we protect our backups? Funnily enough, we've got an option for you, something called an immutable backup, which is one of my favorite words at the moment. So an immutable backup is a type of backup that cannot be altered. It cannot be deleted and it cannot be tampered with. It ensures the integrity of protection against ransomware and threats. Essentially, immutable backups are stored using specialist solutions that support what we call worm technology. So that's write once, read many. Not only that, the other thing that happens with the backup itself is it's something called air-gapped. And that means there's no direct line of sight between your software and systems and your backup. So for all intents and purposes, there's no direct connection between the two. And again, this gives you that immutability, which means it's incredibly, incredibly difficult to even find the thing. Once you do find the thing, you can't encrypt it because you can't write it. So it's quite an elegant solution. You can have these as network area storage. However, the main thrust of them is to go onto the cloud because it means that air gap is a much stronger and safer air gap. There's no connectivity, so to speak. So that's one way of dealing with it. And that's something that we're definitely pushing with our clients as we speak. Just hitting into cyber insurance. So the benefits of cyber insurance are continuity of business, peace of mind, and staying protected. Ollie's going to talk to you more about that, so I'm not really going to get into it too much. But obviously, cyber attacks lead to data breaches, financial loss, and reputational damage. The longer your business is offline, the more reputational damage from your customers you're going to fear as well, or feel even. We can help with cyber insurance. Firstly, we can provide you with a risk assessment to help identify potential cyber threats and vulnerabilities, whether it's a firewall, whether it's your backup, etc. Also, we can actually look at your cyber insurance policy, and we can make sure that your measures that your policy dictates you have are in place. If they're not in place, we can help you put them in place. A very simple one here is employee training. And again, we'll come on to that in a second. This is one of the things I really like to talk to people about. We've got red, amber, green. Obviously, green's good, amber not so good, red not very good at all. But realistically, when we're looking for cyber insurance now, we need to have some form of protection in place. And that could be something as simple as cybersecurity training. This will include phishing simulation. So we take the responsibility away from you in terms of managing that process. We'll conduct spoof phishing emails that will go out. Anyone clicks on them, we can report back to you within your organization, and you can have a conversation with them. But also it ensures that people go through the correct training process. So the Information Commissioner's Office think that that is one of the most fundamental parts to cybersecurity, because so many credentials are compromised by people not understanding what they're looking at from an email point of view. What's that attachment? Well, Okay, there's our first port of call. So it's a very important training tool. And again, we try and get into our customers as much of that as possible for them to understand. Other things there, multi-factor authentication for employee email, off-site backups, we just talked about, immutable backups, your software being updated, patches, etc. Making sure anything that's end of life or unsupported is removed from the network, decommissioned in a timely manner. That is one of the largest vulnerabilities that you can have. Obviously, the system vulnerability scan, that's something that we provide our customers, I believe, either monthly or quarterly, depending on their requirements. But that's the basic that you should have from an insurance point of view, but actually from a data protection point of view as well. And that's an important note with this. Other things here we've got in the amber section, endpoint detection. That's something that we now provide with our antivirus. A disaster recovery and incident response plan. Yes, there is such a thing, and we should all have them. Email filtering tools, and everything else that goes with that. What we will see over the next year, 2 years, etc., is anything in this amber band, we're probably going to find sneaks into that red band. It becomes more of a prerequisite. As more software is available, more deterrents are available, they will filter into the green area, and the green will filter into the amber. So it's an ever-evolving process, which is what it's realistically about when you're dealing with cybercrime. They're very dogged to get your data, and we have to come up with new ways to prevent and secure on that road. So that's a really good system. Again, this recording will have this information in, and we can send you over some fact sheets afterwards as well. So essentially, effective security solutions and risk assessments, working with IT providers will help you reduce the risk, stay protected, and keep within your policy as well. Really, really important. Accreditation, just briefly touching on this, there's 2 very basic levels, Cyber Essentials and Cyber Essentials Plus. They help give you that security in terms of cyber threats, and they're government-backed. They help organizations protect themselves. So it's providing a basic security posture. You need to implement certain things to help prevent yourselves from cyber attacks. You get a very nice little badge, as you can see there. And there's 2 levels to it. The Plus accreditation is just a higher level. It's designed for organizations that need more robust processes. And they might be people working with security firms, for example. And again, it gives you that basis. The benefits of accreditation are increased cybersecurity, improved customer and stakeholder confidence, really, really important, and access to new business. A lot of companies now we're seeing require you to have these accreditations to do business with them. If you don't, you're losing out on these opportunities. So it really is a powerful and helpful tool. If we move on to next generation firewalls and patch updates, the typical construction of a firewall historically has been this. So there's the internet on the left, the World Wide Web, which very, very nice picture, the brick wall, and then our network on the back of that. The reality is that not too long ago, that brick wall was something that was very static. So it was built, you put it in place, and it had an understanding of information traveling out, information traveling in, but it's a very blunt force. The updates to it were infrequent, done by firmware, and you actually needed to be attached to the item to get that firmware updated. So they weren't very responsive, and that's something that we now see a massive change to. So now, next generation firewalls provide a lot of features. It helps us with threat protection, visibility control, and now integration with other security technologies, which are really, really important. And this is now what a next generation firewall will look like. So we use FortiGuard here. There's a few around. We like FortiGuard for a number of reasons. But as you can see now, that main firewall in the middle has all these add-ons in there. I'm not going to go through all of them because that really would bore yourselves. But one of the things that FortiGate actually provide are what we call a hardware replacement service. So if your hardware, the actual unit itself, goes down, they will replace that within the next business day. So that means we can get access to it and get you back up and running within a 24-hour business day scenario. It means that there's continuity of your network security there and you're not offline for too long. I'm just going to pick on a few little items here. We've got intrusion prevention, and it's a feature that detects and blocks malicious network traffic such as exploits, worms, and ransomware before they actually reach the target systems. Antivirus as well, it scans and removes viruses, malware, and spyware from the network traffic, and it helps prevent the spread of infections. And these things here are all configurable. So we actually look at them, monitor them, have a conversation with you, and actually configure them for you. The other thing that we can actually do within that process is something called sandboxing. So what does it do when it finds a piece of malware, finds a bit of suspicious software? It isolates it at the firewall level, and it holds it, analyzing it, and understanding what it is. It stops it fundamentally into the network and the system itself. And that's really where these types of next generation firewalls prove their worth. So it never comes into your domain, your environment. It's stopped and it's analyzed and either deleted or it's flagged up. And again, that's something that as part of our monthly fee, we actually help manage. The other thing it does is it identifies applications and the users on your network. So you can actually therefore control what applications your network has access to. So for example, something as simple as, I don't want Facebook on my machines. Your firewall then can control that environment and make sure that's not downloaded through that firewall. And it's a very simple way to give proper visibility and control to everyone that needs it. Patch updates, massively important. And there's a cautionary tale, as there always is. But you can do that in a number of ways. Administer that yourself, automatic update. So I restarted my laptop today and waited 20 minutes for the automatic update when I really didn't need it to do that. Manual updates, I go in and check myself when it's timely, or third-party patch management software. As a managed service provider, that's exactly what we do. We actually have an internal service level agreement that we want, I believe it is 96% of our customers on the latest software without exception. We have a few little bends in that rule with manufacturing, with CNC software that can't run on later stuff. However, what we can do with that is we can ring fence that and make sure that's not got outside facing ports. So people can't get into that to exploit it. The security that the patch gives you is a massive thing. Anything that's 0 day is found, it's bug fixed, and then it's implemented out. The cautionary tale there is a solicitors in Manchester were fined £97,000 for a data breach. Not because their data got exposed, but because it got exposed through not running patch updates on their software. So what happens is a 0 day event is where a hacker goes along, finds that actually on Windows 10, you can now get in through a backdoor, exploit that, and they sell that on the dark web. Then literally everyone that buys that information can target anyone with a Windows 10 using that backdoor and gain access to it and take out data through it. And that's exactly what happened in those circumstances. And the fine was from the Information Commissioner's office. So it's a really important thing to make sure that your network is secure. Just a little bit about us. We're an award-winning provider of strategic managed IT services and solutions, and we help growing, ambitious SMEs harness the latest technology to support their growth objectives and strategic goals. I think it's fair to say that our approach is massively collaborative. So we work and we want to be a strategic partner with our clients. We want to really understand what you want, how you want, and when you want to get there. And we give you a roadmap of doing that. I think the first instance, quite a lot of the time, it's as simple as you need to be protected. These are the things you need to invest in at day one. And this is where we're going over the next 6 to 12 months or even longer as well. So that's my bit done. I'm going to hand you over to Ollie. I'm ready on the trigger, Ollie, as well. So just give me the nod and I'll start you off. And you're on mute. And you should be able to unmute now, you said.
There we go. Hi, everyone. And yes, thank you for joining us today on looking at sort of the cyber security and that interaction with cyber insurance as well. So obviously Matt spoke about putting the right security infrastructure and how important that is, but you need that added layer of security because it doesn't always, it's not a one-stop solution, unfortunately. So if we go into the next slide. So why cyber insurance? So like I said, it's an added layer to safety net. Data from our insurers has told us that 30% of cyber claims are actually from criminals gaining access to the system with the sort of system protection in place, which Matt was talking about. But the other 70% are actually to do with human error because we're all human, we make mistakes, and especially when IT is involved and we're not all IT professionals. Some of those mistakes could be like not all employees sharing the same careful process. It could be a really extremely busy day and someone makes a rush payment without realizing that it's a fraudulent request. And then those dodgy emails that you see might look really authentic, but if you're not taking the time to look out for the discrepancies, then you'll click on it and could let someone in. And then some employees, like I mentioned before, not tech savvy and don't understand the risks that IT can actually involve. So go to the next slide. So the main businesses at risk. So we'll see in the news that it's all about probably not Apple because you don't hear much about them. That would be detrimental to their image. But there's big companies and organizations which are getting attacks, but those are the whales in the industry. So small businesses are low-hanging fruit. So cyber criminals can go for the easiest and fastest ways to be successful. They know that these smaller companies have less resource and they are than the bigger targets. And those smaller businesses are actually a gateway to the larger businesses for these attackers, because lots of smaller businesses use software of larger organizations. And those small businesses become collateral damage. So if a large tech provider suffers an attack, the smaller businesses are heavily reliant on their tech. And that causes disruption, breach data, and reputational harm. And I think it's safe to say that cyber attackers target the vulnerable rather than the valuable the majority of the time. So that's why SME is the main target. So if we go on to the next slide, this might sort of hit home a bit in terms of how prevalent cyber attacks actually are. So this is a threat map of attacks that are happening in the world as we speak. This is live data. This isn't sort of just some fancy screensaver. And it shows sort of this is a global issue because you've got different countries, people from different countries going after people in other countries for either flooding malware, phishing, or botnet attacks, that sort of stuff. So that's just quite a worrying graphic of what's going on in the world today. So if we go back to the presentation, and then the next slide. So you've been attacked. What could you be liable for following that attack? So the third parties that you were involved with could take you to court for your security failure, data and privacy breaches. And they could be customers, suppliers, or other people you hold data on. You've got the regulator, because it is a legal requirement to keep the data you hold safe, and failing to do so can result in a fine. The maximum fine under GDPR and data protection is 17.5 mil or 4% of annual global turnover. That's the max, whichever is greater. And then if payment card industry fines as well, they range between 3 and 60K. as well as you could have card payment facilities revoked if your customer's card details are exposed. And then you could cause damage to your customers, vendors, resulting from a fraudulent payment instruction from your network. So the attackers can actually get into your network, manipulate invoices, pretend to be you, and try and speak to a third party that you deal with to try and get money off them. And there is a cost in itself to actually notify your data subjects, so people you have data on, notifying them about the breach in your data. Yeah, that's in accordance with GDPR regulations. You have to notify them by statutory requirements. And you could also cause a third party to lose income by your system being attacked if you're providing valuable services to a customer. And imagine if a cyber attacker got into your website or your content stream and started posting defamatory statements and slander about someone, then someone could sue you as a result of that. And then you could also have there could be damages caused to a third party from unintentionally transferring a virus from your network. You might not know it's even there. So we spoke about other people, but let's talk about your organization. Let's talk about your costs. So we move on to the next slide. So the impact on you is you suffer a breach, you've got reputational damage because of the breach of trust between your business and your stakeholders if their data has been compromised. How you manage that response could be the difference between losing and retaining your customers. Matt spoke about ransomware attacks, and these are on the rise, and these are an effective way to extort money. So the criminal will ultimately lock down your business critical data or threaten to release data if their monetary demands aren't met. And I think the best way to describe it is this sort of beacon analogy. So the cyber attacker can plant something, let's call it a beacon in your network, and it'll collect data to see if you're a viable target. Will they pay the ransom? If they see that you're viable, they can activate that beacon, and it'll basically do what they wanted to do to shut down your information or systems, and then demand the ransom to release it. And no doubt that will also cause an issue in your trading. You'll lose customers, also failing at winning new customers. We are heavily reliant on IT to trade, and if this is down, the majority of us couldn't trade at the same rates prior to the attack. And your digital assets, so imagine if a cyber attacker got in there, they could actually mess it up and ruin the software that you use on a daily basis. So you need to rebuild that. So same with hardware. The actual aftermath of a cyber attack could render some of your hardware completely useless. So you might need to replace it or repair it at the very least. And we talk about social engineering fraud. That's a fancy way of saying those phishing attacks, or someone's impersonating either your customer or your colleague for you to transfer money and or use fraudulent use of your services, such as your cloud or telephone provider. And then you could lose trade secrets and intellectual property as well. So you need illegal costs paid to actually get them reinstated. So next slide, please. So this is the video. We tried using this. Hopefully it will play as well as it can through the Zoom. So if Matt can hit play, this is a cyber attack in the real world. So if you can't hear it, let me know. So I'm struggling to hear it, Matt. If you can do your the wiggly thing you did in the rehearsal.
Sure.
There we go.
I'm going to be in the bike on a logo. Seeing the other side of the road.
Oh, is that my twin? Oh, it's a fake photo.
It's exactly the same.
What the hell?
I've had people walking past who are like, what are two Brompton stores doing right opposite each other?
So
Yeah.
weird.
I feel like I'm in some parallel universe.
That's a couple who were just in here, right?
Yeah.
They brought a bike.
They walked in from here.
And then they went over
straight.
there.
Typed in their website.
I'm really confused.
Go walk over there.
We just wondered what was going on. He was like, do you want to test out one of our bikes? No, they've got the same tags as us.
How are those Bromptons delivered into their shop? What? What's happening?
I think these are our.
Delivery different for service.
You sure this isn't delivery for over?
Brompton. No, it's here, mate.
Are you Brompton?
No, Brompton.
Yeah, I can't even tell. What the hell? All right, we've got customers.
Hold on.
Hi, guys.
What's in a Brompton?
£840. Bigger tyres.
Give us a demonstration.
There's a couple of different methods.
Sorry, just 1 second, sir.
How many parts? So actually, look. Yes, snap back. Pound and tree material.
Gary, what's the smallest size?
You don't want the mud guards to take them off.
Bye-bye, see you.
What was that?
The guy said, tell me your favourite 3 things about the tyre.
What the hell is going on?
You're getting priced down.
Really? What should we do?
Whoa. What are you doing? Can you take the sign down, please?
This is not okay.
The fact that you don't know what to do in that situation, it's daunting, really.
It's one thing if you see it online, but as you see it right in front of you, it kind of really brings it home that this is happening probably everywhere with every brand.
I was in so much shock, I was just going to take my t-shirt off and just walk out. I was like, what is going on? Like,
To see the company that you work for being undermined like that kind of really makes it real.
Every hack in this film is based on real criminal methods.
Right, I think we can stop that one there.
If you fall victim, Miss Cox will get you back up and running fast.
So ultimately, I'm not sure how well it came through with you guys, but ultimately that showed an attack in real life. You saw someone steal someone's trade secrets and set up an identical store and take their customers. So it's like theft of IP, intellectual property. You saw someone flooding the opposition, the target with loads of traffic, causing them to crash so they can't actually trade. And then you saw them blocking up their shop. And that's also to symbolize a ransomware attack. So like no one could come in here until, no customer can buy anything from you until you pay this ransom. So it's quite a good way of highlighting that. Let me know if you want the full video. We can send a link as well. So we'll go into the next slide, and almost we want to know what the solution is now. And I think you probably understand where I'm going with this. So the solution is a comprehensive cyber insurance package. So cyber insurance is usually created with 3 pillars. So it starts as really basic third-party coverage. Basically, it's to help pay those legal there's obligatory costs if you have a hack. It's notifying people of breaches, but it doesn't care for your business in terms of your actual first-party losses. So any comprehensive cyber insurance policy will have those third-party cost coverages. So if you've only got third-party, I would think about upgrading that. And the cybercrime third pillar is more about your criminals actually taking money off you. So those are your phishing scams, those invoice manipulations that people do when you send money in the wrong way, and those impersonation frauds. So having those 3 kind of covers you off against, well, very comprehensively. So if we go to the next slide. So this is a little graphic from CFC Underwriting. So we spoke to them about their claims costs, and actually, because businesses are so reliant on tech, their first-party costs are 96% of their claim costs. So that just stresses the importance. If you've got third-party policy, you've almost got cyber public liability, and not every business looks to claim on that. It's very infrequent. So you need to look after your own sort of network as well. So next slide. So these are a few misconceptions that we hear, and I just wanted to debunk a few of them. So this highlights the interaction between a company like SJL and Quintech, because people say they don't need cyber insurance, they've got the IT security, but ultimately the question is, if you put locks on your house and install an alarm and CCTV, you still buy household insurance. So investing in IT security is that precautionary measure, but these measures can fail, and you need a policy to provide that safety net, because your business isn't subject to the financial loss. So basically, so your business isn't subject to losses. So that's added another layer of protection. Another one is people outsource all their IT, but that's very common anyway. So if you outsource, you've still got IT exposure, because it is still likely you will need to notify your affected customers and individuals in dealing with subsequent regulatory actions if the data that's been out, they're holding the data and you've outsourced that holding the data, you've still got to notify the customers. And if your outsourced IT failed, you could still be subject to income loss, and the severity is dependent on what you outsource. So, and the next one is you don't collect any sensitive information. So you don't need cyber insurance. So you don't have to collect sensitive information. So a lot of businesses rely on computer systems, like I've already said, to operate, whether that is business critical or as simple as electronic banking. So, but two of the most common and costly sources of cyber claims are ransomware and funds transfer fraud. These can be caused by the attacker compromising your emails, which is one of the most common ways of an attacker getting in, when links can be received for ransomware attacks, as well as fraudulent transaction requests. And then the last thing, cyber insurance is too expensive. No one likes to spend so much on their insurance, but it's one of those necessary things we have to do. But the cost of the cyber insurance is very much reflective of the increased severity of cyber claims and the innovative risk management that comes with your policy, which I'll go into later. The question is, can you afford not to take it out? The size of these claims are business ending, so offsetting the cost of a cyber insurance is kind of a no-brainer. So if we go to the next slide. And that's where sort of your IT company comes in and your insurance broker or insurer. So your IT provider will be expert on how to implement this cybersecurity that's required by the insurers, going back to Matt's traffic lights of what's required for getting the best policy. Your IT provider will also need to understand what your cyber insurance requires to ensure that infrastructure is in place to make sure the insurance is valid. Your insurer will likely ask quite a lot of technical queries that your IT company will be best placed to answer, whether that's at quote stage or at renewal. And your insurer will likely also want to contact your IT company to assist in responding to a cyber incident. And then having the right IT security in place will ensure that your cyber risk is desirable to the insurer and will help me as a broker negotiate you the best rate and the best cover available. Next slide. So I spoke just a bit before about innovative risk management that insurance, especially cyber, plays. So these are sort of a list of prevention and tools provided by your policy. So they're not just you don't just buy the insurance policy and you go, I hope I never have to claim on this. They want to give the policyholder a bit more value than that, but it's also in the interest of the insurer and the insured to make sure those cyber claims don't happen in the first place. So insurers partner with government and private organizations to identify and analyze information on cyber threats to their clients. They also search for signs of malicious activity, unauthorized access, or other indicators which could compromise their clients. They identify trends to proactively alert clients in specific industries being targeted from real-life claims data. They actively scan their clients for vulnerabilities and cyber risks that have high correlations in claims. And they all provide like an app, either that's mobile phone or web-based, where you can report cyber incidents, you can do dark web monitoring, phishing simulations, and deep scanning for free. Some insurers at quote stage would do an open domain search on your network and give you a cyber risk score without even actually purchasing the policy yet. So there's just what they do to go a bit above and beyond. So next slide. So these are just some claims examples, just that where I spoke to some of our insurers so they could provide us to help bring this sort of cover to life. So the first one is a haulage company. They suffered a ransomware attack where criminals encrypted data regarding their routes, logistical info, key contacts, and stock quantities. So quite critical. The ransom requested was just shy of £10,000, which is quite low, to be honest, in the grand scheme of things, for the decryption key. That haulage company actually refused and went to manually rebuild their database. During that time, they lost £1 million of sales revenue in a month, but the insured was able to recover this loss of income through their CFC cyber insurance policy. Now, in an ideal world, if you get ransomware attacks, you've got cyber insurance in place, you call your broker or insurer straight away, and they will implement incident response to negotiate with that cyber attacker with the ransomware and see if refusing it or paying it is the best course of action to get your business back up and running. Next example. So social engineering attack, I've said this a few times about social engineering. Fancy word for impersonation. So basically the financial controller in this law firm received a call from someone pretending to be from the bank, explaining that suspicious transfers have been flagged on their account. The fraudster insisted that the funds had been stolen and requested passwords and PIN codes to freeze the account. The law firm then called the bank the following day and found out they had been defrauded of £100,000 of funds, which the bank could not recover. Their cyber insurance paid out under this crime section of cover. So back to the third pillar that I spoke about. And then the next claim example. So unfortunately, this one wasn't covered and it was quite a big one. So pen underwriting. So the client actually decided they didn't want to pay the extra for the cybercrime insurance. So this isn't one of our clients, it's just examples that they've shown us. So basically, the organisation ended up paying, being a victim of invoice frauds, paid 930k to an unknown third party. And this just think twice about your insurance policy and ask yourself, is it as comprehensive as it should be? And if you don't know if it is, just ask me. And then the next claim example. So this didn't actually get to a claim because of the proactive risk management that the cyber insurance policy gave the client. So Matt spoke about updates. They are so important. If you don't update, there's a reason why there's so many updates going through to patch security. So a Microsoft update wasn't installed in time. That allowed the attacker to fabricate themselves as a privileged account on the victim's server. The attacker installed the malicious code to the network. So they installed the software to allow ransomware to enter through the back door that the attacker created. The insurers actually proactively scanned that customer and found the back door in the network. Then they contacted the customer's IT team and told them how to plug that back door and delete the malware. So that avoided a massive headache and sizable claim for that company. So it is there to help you and provide beyond just paying out money. So yes, next slide. So just a bit about where I work. So SJL Insurance Services, we're based in Worcester. We're a large independent. We've got awards for customer feedback, Claims Team of the Year for last year in the National Insurance Awards. We partner with the UK's leading proactive cyber insurers, BEBA approved broker and Lloyd's of London broker as well. Personally, I look after a variety of industries, and every time I speak to my clients, I'm always talking about cyber because it does not discriminate between what type of customer you are. But thank you everyone for listening. And if there's any questions that me or Matt can take, then just fire away in the chat or raise your hand to see if you can speak.
I think as well with the time that we've done, we're sort of 55 minutes in. So my aim is to reach out just to all of you post this, have a conversation with you and answer any questions as well. I think the same with Ollie. If you've got any questions directly to him, we'll make sure that you've got everyone's contact details, and you can you'll get a call or get in touch yourself. So if there's a question now, I think we got one. So which vertical is the most compromised? That's a cracking question. We work a lot within manufacturing, and we see that as a more frequent target at the moment, actually, because a lot of the manufacturing firms within the SME marketplace are on that supply chain to larger business or more secure business, i.e., it's security contracts, etc. Financial institutions on the whole are the most targeted worldwide. It doesn't mean that they're the most compromised, though, worldwide. They are the most targeted. The other thing that we're seeing is an increase in healthcare targeting as well. So I don't think any vertical is a good vertical to be in, I'm going to say. Ollie mentioned the charity one there as well. Again, we're seeing more and more activity in the charity marketplace as well. So I think it just depends on what size your business is as to where you sit within there. Certainly for us, the marketplace of manufacturing, being part of that supply chain is a place where you need to be on your game with your different services, your different filters in place, the different layers of security, and your cyber insurance. Great question.
Yeah, I'll just follow on from that.
Yeah,
Sorry,
go on.
Matt. Yeah, every time insurers come over to us to talk about cyber claims, Matt hit the nail on the head with that one. Manufacturing, they're always talking about ransomware attacks in the manufacturing industry, but they don't discriminate. On that threat map that I showed a bit earlier, it actually shows the top targeted industries on that day, and they're usually healthcare, government, and I think it was financial institutions. But I have to double check. But it is so non-discriminative. They'll find a way of getting something off someone. Each industry's got their value, which the cyber attacker would want. So yeah, there's no discrimination.
Any other sort of questions that anyone wants to pop in the group, you can. And as I said, we'll be getting in touch with you anyway. Bearing that in mind, I'll stop the share. There we go. And then I'll just pause that recording as well. So thank you very much for joining us.